जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवर धारी जय गिरिवर धारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवर धारी जय गिरिवर धारी यशोदनन्दन ब्रज जन राञ्जन नन ब्रज जन राञ्जन यमुनतीरावनचारि जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हे हरे हरे राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे राम हरे राम हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Privaracharya Asata Sara Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Privaracharya Asata Sara Srila Bhaktisanta Saraswati Maharaj ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Se Kahusha Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radharadhanath ki jai. Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Giriraj Govardhana ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanande Hari Hari Om. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Krishna Vasai Krishna 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 Vasai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, dear devotees, today we'll be reading from Srila Prabhupada Leela Amrita, because it's Ekadasi. And we are the part 2 of India Revisited. So let's just start somewhere. Just to make certain that Swamiji would come to San Francisco, Mukunda sent a telegram to Calcutta. Swami, Brahmananda and I agree you start immediately. Advise exact arrival dates, Mukunda. Srila Prabhupada had planned this route through Tokyo, intending to stop for a day to probe if there is any possibility of starting a center. In Tokyo, he would let Mukunda know by telephone his arrival time in San Francisco. But 3 weeks passed while Srila Prabhupada continued to wait for his P-form. Meanwhile, he received good news from New York. The Macmillan Company's interest in the Bhagavad Gita was real. The contract was being drawn. Pleased with Brahmananda, he wrote to him on November 11th, explaining his vision for distributing Krishna conscious literature. So, quote, if publications are there, we can work from one center only, like New York or San Francisco, for propagating our cult all over the world. Let us stick to the publication of BTG more and more nicely and publish some Vedic literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, etc. Unquote. Srila Prabhupada's mind turned more to the preaching that awaited him in America. He assessed what he had done so far, what he could do, and the process, what he would do, and the process by which he would do it. I think this is part of the quote as well. So I'm not in agreement with Mr. Alsman that we are expanding very thinly. In my opinion, a single sincere soul can maintain a center. You know, I started the center at 26 2nd Avenue alone. I took the risk of $200 per month for rent. At that time, there were no assistants. Mukunda was at the time a friend, and there were no responsibility for him for maintaining the center. Gradually, Kirtananda and Hayagriva joined, but they did not take any responsibility. Still, I was maintaining the establishment simply depending on Krishna. And then Krishna sent me everything, men and money. Similarly, if a sincere soul goes out and opens a center in any part of the world, Krishna will help him in all respects. Without being empowered by Krishna, nobody can preach Krishna consciousness. It is not academic qualification or financial strength which helps in these matters, but it is the sincerity of purpose which helps us always. Therefore, I wish that you, Brahmananda, will remain in charge of New York. Let Satsvarupa be in charge of Boston. Let Mukunda be in charge of San Francisco. Let Janardhan be in charge of Montreal. Let Nandarani and Dayananda be in charge of Los Angeles. And let Subal be in charge of Santa Fe. In this way, you will follow my example as I did in the beginning at 26 2nd Avenue. That is preaching, cooking, writing, talking, chanting, everything one man's work. I never thought about the audience. I was prepared to chant if there were no man to hear me. The principle of chanting is to glorify the Lord and not to attract a crowd. The principle of if Krishna hears nicely, then he will ask some sincere devotee to gather in such a place. Therefore, he advised that thousands of centers be started if we find out a sincere soul for each and every center. We do not require more men to start. If there is one sincere soul, that is sufficient to start a new center. Hare Krishna. So here, actually before I speak, let me just say some prayers. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tadati Swapadantikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopikakanta Radhakanta Namaste Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchikalpaturubhescha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we see here that Prabhupada is in India, and he's encouraging his disciples to open centers in various parts of the world, especially in America, in Montreal, in Santa Fe, in different parts of America, like this. And Prabhupada is encouraging them by saying how I opened the center in 26 2nd Avenue, and I did it alone. There was no one to help me. It was just Mukunda who found the place, and he had no dealings thereafter. He was just a visitor, and in this way Prabhupada managed to pay $200 rent every month, and this is how Srila Prabhupada started, just depending on Krishna. So in all our activities, we should just depend on Krishna. We can go out and open centers, right, if we have the capacity to do so. Or we could, whatever devotional service we engage in, we should just depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the example that we can take from Srila Prabhupada in reading this message that he sent to Brahmananda. So on November 12th, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Krishna Devi, "I'm coming soon to San Francisco. I shall let you know the exact date sometime next week. I'm coming over very soon to see you when everything will be adjusted. Hope you are well." And in health notes from Achyutananda continue to arrive. Please tell the devotees out there to take good care of him. It is very hard task trying to restrain him from overworking himself, but they must be strict. He still has to take his medication and get his massage every day. So here we see that when Srila Prabhupada was sick, that he thought the best place for him to recuperate was India, because India was hot, and he was used to that weather, and in this way he thought the best place to recuperate was India. So that's why he went to India, and now he's coming back for his preaching mission. Although he's not 100%, but still, because he's getting some positive information or getting some positive telegram from the West that the preaching is going on. So in this way, he's encouraging his disciples to push on the movement. So let's continue reading. On November 20th, Prabhupada dispatched by boat to New York more than 800 copies of the first 3 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And on the next day, his P-form finally cleared. Immediately, he booked passage on Pan American Airlines and sent a cable informing Mukunda that he would arrive in San Francisco on November 24th at 12:45 p.m. But again, his departure was delayed, this time by a strike by a communist party in Calcutta. Business closed, cars, buses, rickshaws and trains stopped running, riots broke out, there were murders and assassinations. Meanwhile, Prabhupada remained at the Radha Govinda temple. So he sends another telegram. "My return to your country is already settled, but due to a petty revolution in Calcutta, I am not able to leave. Our San Francisco friends may be very anxious because I sent them 2 telegrams, one informing them of my arrival and the other cancelling it. Future arrangements are pending." 2 weeks passed. While waiting in his room for the political strike to end, Prabhupada received a letter from Umapati, one of the devotees he had initiated at the first initiation in New York. Actually, I met Umapati Swami in Poland when I went for the festival. In September of 1966, Umapati had given up practicing Krishna consciousness for half a year, but now he wrote to say he was back. Prabhupada replied, so quote, "It is my duty to deliver the right thing in right earnestness, and it is the duty of the receiver to act in the standard spiritual regulations. When you left us, I simply prayed to Krishna for your return to Krishna consciousness, because that was my duty. Any good soul who approaches me once for spiritual enlightenment is supposed to be depending on my responsibility to take him back to Krishna, back to home. The disciple may misunderstand a bona fide spiritual master, being obliged to do so under the pressure of Maya's influence. But a bona fide spiritual master never lets go of a devotee once accepted. When a disciple misunderstands a bona fide spiritual master, the master regrets for his inability to protect the disciple and sometimes cries with tears in his eyes. We had an experience while my Guru Maharaj was alive. One of his disciples who accepted sannyas was one day forcibly dragged by his wife. My Guru Maharaj lamented with tears in his eyes, saying that he could not save the soul. We should always, therefore, be careful of being attacked by Maya's influence, and the only means of guarantee is to chant Hare Krishna offenselessly. So here we see that Srila Prabhupada is talking about his Guru Maharaj and how his Guru Maharaj, tried to save this one devotee who took sannyas, and his wife came and she dragged him off. So in this way, Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said that he, with tears in his eyes, that he could not save him. So Prabhupada is also making a point that once one is initiated, then he is forcefully dragged by the spiritual master back to the spiritual world. So therefore, we as devotees, we need to put in the effort, right? Jai Shri Radharanath Ki Jai. So we need to put in the effort as to not to bring the spiritual master back to this material world, to take us back. So Prabhupada said this one lifetime, we can go back home, back to Godhead. So why waste time like this? So let's continue reading. When Prabhupada received news of quarreling in Los Angeles temple, he replied to Nandarani, quote, "I know that my presence is very urgently required. Arrangements is already completed and circumstances alone have checked my departure. Please therefore don't be worried. I am coming to your place within a fortnight." Unquote. At the end of the first week, at the end of the first week of December, the strike ended and Srila Prabhupada again booked passage. Quote, "You will be pleased to know that I have purchased my ticket for New York via Tokyo and San Francisco. I am starting tomorrow morning at 9:30, by evening reaching Tokyo via Bangkok and Hong Kong. I shall rest 24 hours in Tokyo, and on the 14th at night, I am starting for San Francisco by local time. I am reaching San Francisco on the same day, the 14th at 12:45 p.m. by PAA 846. Yesterday I have sent one telegram to this effect, and I hope I shall reach there safely as scheduled. I am so glad to learn that Satyabrata and yourself are trying to get the teachings of Lord Chaitanya published. You do not know how pleased I am to hear this news. When one book is published, I think I have conquered an empire. So try to publish as many books as possible, and that will enhance the beauty and prestige of our society. The impersonalist mission has nothing to say substantial about but because they have money and have published so many rubbish literatures, they have become very cheaply popular. You can imagine how much powerful our society will become when we have as many substantial literatures published. We should not only publish in English, but also in other important languages such as French and German." Unquote. When the day of Prabhupada's departure finally arrived, he gave last instructions to Achyutananda and Ramanuja. "Just pray to Lord Krishna that I can go to America," he requested Achyutananda. "How can I?" Achyutananda replied. "You'll be leaving me." "No," Srila Prabhupada replied. "We'll always remain packed up together as you remember my teachings. If you preach, you will become strong, and all these teachings will be in proper perspective. When we stop our preaching, then everything becomes stagnated and we lose our life. Even here in India, people think that they know everything, but they are wrong. There is no end to hearing about Krishna. God is unlimited, so no one can say, I know everything about God. Those who say that they know everything about God do not know. So everyone will appreciate you. Do not fear. So, the statement is often heard by Indian people, even in South Africa, that they know everything, because they're born in the culture, Vedic culture, they think they know everything, but they don't. And if you just ask them one question, like, who is that personality, for Lord Chaitanya, who is that personality? You know everything, so please explain to me who that personality is. That they do not know, they become tongue-tied, they cannot say, because they don't know Lord Chaitanya, right? They haven't heard of Lord Chaitanya. So therefore, our mission is to preach and to introduce them to Lord Chaitanya. Achyutananda, quote, when I returned to the room after sending off Swamiji, I paid my obeisances at the airport. I felt a void. I felt very lonely and rather weak. I returned to the room in front of Sri Radha Govinda and chanting on my beads, I started packing up. I started pacing back and forth. What will I preach? The black and white marble floor passed under me. I stepped on the cracks, in between the cracks, and on the black and white marble again and again. When I realized I wasn't seeing Radha Krishna, I sat down directly in front and saw the brilliant form of Radha Govindaji, and my eyes filled with tears. So here, Achyutananda is feeling separation from Srila Prabhupada, and he's pacing back and forth, not knowing what to do because Prabhupada has left Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada spent his stopover in Tokyo mostly in going to the hotel and checking into a room, bathing, resting, eating, and returning to the airport the next day in time for his flight to San Francisco. But he did speak with a government secretary explaining that Krishna consciousness was a universal philosophy for reviving a person's original eternal consciousness, and he explained the crucial need for Krishna consciousness in human society. The secretary, however, said he felt certain that the Japanese government wouldn't be able to help in a religious movement. Prabhupada was annoyed. This supposedly educated man was so ignorant as to mistake Krishna consciousness for merely another sectarian religion. Prabhupada wanted intelligent men to try to understand Krishna consciousness, and understand the Gita was actually knowledge, transcendental knowledge, beyond the inferior knowledge of the senses and the mind. But he had his plane to catch. Japan would have to wait. The passengers and flight crew saw Prabhupada as an elderly Indian man dressed in saffron robes. The stewardess weren't sure at first whether to speak in English, but when he asked them for fruit, they saw that he could and that he was a kind gentleman. He was quiet, putting on his glasses and reading from an old book of Indian scriptures for hours at a time. Just need to get this off. Moving his lips and praying while fingering Indian prayer beads in a cloth pouch, or sometimes resting beneath a blanket, his eyes shut. No one knew or bothered to inquire into what he was doing. They didn't know that anxious young hearts were awaiting him in San Francisco, or that Macmillan Company in New York wanted to publish his English translation of Bhagavad Gita, or that he had spiritual centers in 2 countries with plans for expansion all over the world. Prabhupada sat patiently, chanting often, and his hands in his bead bags depending on Krishna as the hours passed. After a 10-hour flight, the plane landed in San Francisco, standing with hundreds of passengers. Srila Prabhupada gradually made his way to the exit, down the long attached tunnel. Even before he reached the terminal building, he could see Govinda Dasi and a few other disciples smiling and waving on the other side of a glass partition. As he entered the terminal building, he moved towards the glass, and his disciples dropped to their knees, offering obeisances. As they raised their heads, he smiled and continued walking down the corridor. While they walked alongside, only the glass partition separating them. Then he disappeared from his view as he walked down the stairways towards immigrations and customs. The downstairs areas was also glassed in, and Prabhupada could see more than 50 devotees and friends waiting eagerly. As they again caught sight of him, they cried out as a group, "Hare Krishna." Swamiji looked wonderfully to them. Tanned from his 6 months in India, younger and more sprightly, he smiled and triumphantly held up his hand in greeting. Devotees were crying in happiness. As Srila Prabhupada stood in line at customs inspection point, he could hear the devotees' kirtan, the glass walls only partially masking the sound. The government officials ignored the chanting, although the connection between the saffron robe passenger and the joyful chanters was not hard to see. Srila Prabhupada waited in line, glancing now and then at his chanting disciples. Since he was already sent ahead, the 800 books and several crates of musical instruments, he had only one suitcase to place on before the table inspector. Methodically, the inspector went through the contents: cotton saris for the girls, silk garlands for the Jagannath deities, kartals, saffron dhotis and kurtas, a coconut grater, and little boxes of Ayurvedic medicine. "What are these?" the inspector probed. The little bottles looked strange, and he called for another inspector. A delay. Swamiji's disciples became perturbed by the pity-minded customs inspector poking through the Swamiji's things, now opening and the tightly corked bottles, sniffing and checking the contents. The inspectors seemed satisfied. Prabhupada tried to close his suitcase, but he couldn't work the zipper. Another delay. The devotees, still anxiously chanting, watched as Swamiji, with the help of the gentleman behind him, managed to zip his suitcase closed. Swamiji walked towards the glass doors. The devotees began chanting madly. As he stepped through the door, a devotee blew a conch shell that resounded loudly throughout the hall. Devotees garlanded him, and everyone pressed in, handing him flowers. He entered their midst as their beloved father enters and reciprocates the embrace of his loving children. Hare Krishna. So that's the end of the book, this volume actually, volume 3. So we see here how anxious the devotees were to receive Srila Prabhupada. And, they were chanting and dancing and waving and, waiting for Srila Prabhupada to get through the airport customs. But we see that Prabhupada was delayed by the inspectors probing into his suitcase and trying to open the medicine and, smelling it and trying to, figure what that was. And eventually they let him go, and the devotees were so pleased. Were jumping and chanting, and some of them were actually crying. And I was watching a video the other day of Srila Prabhupada, and this whole scene here that basically was spoken about was what I saw on the video, when Srila Prabhupada entered the airport and as he walked through. So it was a very nice sight. And as I was reading this, I was, trying to recall this video that I watched. It was so beautiful. So, and also, when our spiritual masters arrive also, there's a grand reception, and we actually become so exhilarated, by him being here. So this is the case with Srila Prabhupada and his disciples as well. So thank you very much. I will stop here. If anyone would like to contribute, you can be most welcome to do so. If not, we'll close. Srila Prabhupada Leela Amrita Ki Jai. Go Premanande Hari Hari Bol.